Welcome to Deep Fear, where your darkest nightmares turn real. Tonight's story may just keep you awake, so let's start the video. And don't forget to subscribe.
This happened to me when I was in my junior year of high school. And to this day, I still don't know if what I saw was real or if my brain was just trying to protect me from something I wasn't meant to understand. It was late October, the kind of cloudy day where the sky just stays gray from morning until night. Our homeroom teacher, Mrs. Lang, had suddenly taken leave because of a family emergency. We were told we'd have a substitute for at least a week. I didn't think much of it at first. Substitutes came and went all the time. That Monday morning, when the bell rang, the classroom door opened slowly. The first thing I noticed was how quiet it got, not just inside the class, but in the hallway too. It was like someone had hit a mute button on the entire school. The substitute stepped inside. She was tall, maybe over 6 feet, and so thin her wrists looked fragile. She wore a long dark gray skirt and a button-up blouse that looked like something from the 1960s. Her hair was tied into a neat bun, but there was something off about her face. Her skin was so pale it almost looked powdery, and her eyes were an unnervingly bright gray, like steel. She didn't smile. She just placed her bag, an old leather satchel, on the desk and wrote her name on the board, Ms. Cray. Her handwriting was immaculate, perfect cursive, like it was printed from some old-timey textbook. At first, the class was silent. We were waiting for her to say something, but she just turned to look at us and didn't blink for maybe 30 seconds. I remember my stomach twisting because her stare wasn't casual. It was like she was counting each of us, memorizing our faces. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was soft, but it carried across the room like there was a microphone hidden somewhere. "Take out your history books," she said. "Turn to page 134. It wasn't weird until I realized our homeroom wasn't even a history class. It was just the start of the school day. We were supposed to take attendance, make announcements, that sort of thing, but no one argued. Something about her made you want to follow instructions. We spent the next 20 minutes reading silently. She stood at the front, perfectly still. I don't mean she didn't fidget. She didn't even sway. I kept glancing up, and every single time her eyes were on me, not scanning the room, not looking at someone else. Me. When the bell rang, I expected her to leave so the next teacher could come in. But she didn't. She stayed. In fact, she taught the next class too, and the one after that. By lunch, it was clear she wasn't just subbing for our homeroom. She was replacing every single teacher we were supposed to have that day. No one questioned it out loud, but I could see the uneasy looks we were giving each other. She didn't eat lunch, just sat at the teacher's desk, staring out the window at nothing. When I passed by the classroom on my way to the cafeteria, I glanced in. She was still there, hands folded on the desk. Her eyes flicked toward me the second I appeared in the doorway. The weirdest part came after lunch. We had gym class, 5th period, but when we went to the locker rooms, Coach Davis was gone, and Ms. Cray was there instead, still in her skirt and blouse. She told us to run laps without explaining why. It was like she knew exactly where we were supposed to be at all times, and she'd already positioned herself there before we arrived. By the end of the day, I was unsettled enough that I decided to ask the office who she was. The secretary, Mrs. Henson, gave me this blank look when I mentioned her name. "Ms. Cray?" she repeated. "We don't have a substitute by that name." I laughed nervously. She's been teaching all my classes today. Tall, pale, hair in a bun. Mrs. Henson shook her head slowly. Honey, we didn't have any substitutes scheduled for your grade today. I left the office confused, but when I turned the corner toward my last class, I froze. There she was, standing in the middle of the empty hallway, waiting for me. Hindi, si wen, usamorn. I didn't remember walking to class. I didn't remember sitting down. All I know is that when I came to, I was in my desk, and she was at the front of the room again. The final bell rang, and everyone started packing up. But as I left, I glanced back. She was still there, watching. The next morning, I told myself maybe I'd imagined some of it. But when I walked into school, she was already in the classroom. And she never left that day either, or the day after. By Thursday, the entire class was acting different. No one spoke above a whisper. No one asked questions. It was like we were all afraid of breaking some unspoken rule. She never blinked, never ate, never drank water. And I never saw her leave the building, not once. On Friday, I stayed late on purpose. I pretended I had to use the restroom so I could come back after everyone was gone and see if she finally packed up. This happened during my freshman year of high school. And if you've ever had that gut feeling that something is watching you when you're alone, you'll understand why I'll never step foot in that building again. Our school was old, built in the 1950s, and the gym was the original part of the campus. It had been renovated a few times, but the walls, the bleachers, even the smell of the place felt dated. The air always carried this faint mustiness, like mildew and dust had settled deep into the concrete. During PE one day, I noticed something strange. At the far end of the gym, behind the last row of bleachers, there was a small rusted metal door. It was barely taller than me, painted the same dull beige as the wall, so it blended in. I'd never paid attention to it before. That day, our janitor, Mr. Rowe, was mopping nearby. I asked him about it, and he stopped dead in his tracks. His eyes narrowed, and he said in this low voice, "That door's not for students. It stays locked for a reason." Naturally, that just made me more curious. Over the next week, I kept glancing at it whenever we were in the gym. Sometimes I thought I saw the padlock shift, like it had been moved slightly between classes. Once I swore I heard a faint tapping sound from behind it. One afternoon, I stayed after school for basketball practice. Most of the team had already gone home, and I was alone in the gym shooting hoops. That's when I heard it. 3 slow, hollow knocks. They came from the direction of the door. I froze, the ball bouncing away across the floor. Another knock followed, softer this time, like whoever, or whatever, was behind the door didn't want to be heard. I told myself it was just pipes. Old buildings make noises all the time. But then I heard my name, clear as day. It wasn't a shout. It wasn't an echo. It was a whisper, drawn out, like the voice was sliding right under the crack of the door. "Eli!" I backed away so fast I nearly tripped over my own feet. The next day, I mentioned it to my friend Marcus. He told me his older brother had gone to the same school years before and had heard the same thing. According to him, there was an old basement under the gym that used to be used for storage. Sometime in the 70s, a student had gone missing during a pep rally, and no one ever found them. The basement was sealed up afterward. That's the kind of urban legend you hear in every school. But the way Marcus said it, low, serious, I could tell he believed it. The thought of that voice stuck with me. I started looking for opportunities to get near the door without anyone noticing. Eventually, I saw my chance. One Thursday evening, we had a home basketball game. I wasn't playing, so I was helping set up the chairs and water coolers. The gym was buzzing with noise, and everyone was distracted. I slipped behind the bleachers and crouched near the door. Up close, the padlock was newer than the door itself, shiny and heavy, like it had been replaced recently, but the frame around it was cracked, the metal warped from age. I pressed my ear against it. At first, nothing. Then, breathing. Slow, steady. Not echoing like it would if it was just air moving in an empty basement. This sounded close. Too close. I should have left. But my brain decided the smartest thing to do was knock back. The moment my knuckles tapped the metal, there was an immediate response, 3 knocks, faster and louder than before. Then the voice again, only this time it didn't say my name. It just whispered, "Come down." That night, I barely slept. I kept imagining what might be down there. By morning, my curiosity had completely overpowered my fear. Friday after school, I waited until the gym was empty. I had a plan. Borrow the bolt cutters from the maintenance shed, pop the lock, and just take a quick peek. In and out. The second the lock snapped, I felt a rush of cold air hit my face, so cold it made my eyes water. The door creaked open to reveal a narrow staircase, spiraling downwards into darkness. The smell was worse up close. Damp concrete, mold, and something faintly metallic. I turned on my phone's flashlight and started down. The stairs went deeper than I expected, at least 2 full stories underground. My light reflected off walls covered in peeling paint. The air felt thick, heavy. When I reached the bottom, I found myself in a wide, low-ceilinged room. Rusty metal shelves lined the walls, some holding old sports equipment covered in dust. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, like gray curtains. And then I saw them. Footprints. Bare human footprints in the dust, leading from one corner of the room toward a hallway. I followed them, my heart pounding. The hallway was even darker, the walls narrowing until I had to turn sideways to get through. At the end was another door, this one wooden, swollen from dampness. The footprints stopped just before it. I reached for the handle. That's when I heard it again. My name. Right behind me. I spun around, shining my light, but the hallway was empty. When I turned back, the wooden door was open. I don't remember hearing it move, but there it was. An opening into pitch blackness. Something moved inside. I couldn't see it clearly. Just a shifting shadow that seemed too tall to fit under the low ceiling. The air pressure changed. It felt like the room was inhaling. I bolted. I didn't care about being quiet. I tore up the stairs, through the metal door, and slammed it shut. I shoved the padlock back into place without locking it and ran all the way home. The next morning, the door was gone. Not locked, not hidden. Gone. The wall where it had been was now a smooth sheet of beige-painted concrete, like no door had ever been there at all. I never told anyone exactly what happened. Marcus asked me if I'd ever gone down there, and I just told him, nope, and I never will. But sometimes when I'm alone in a gym, any gym, I swear I can still hear those 3 knocks. When I started my sophomore year at Lincoln High, the school handed out locker assignments during the first week. I remember standing in line in the main hallway, the smell of fresh floor wax still heavy from summer cleaning. When it was my turn, Mrs. Kellerman, the front desk secretary, looked down at the sheet and hesitated before handing me my slip. "You got 329, she said, slowly, like she wasn't sure if that was right. I took the paper and didn't think much about it until I realized 329 was in the old wing of the building. Nobody liked the old wing. It was where the original classrooms from the 1940s still stood, unused except for storage. The lockers there were mostly empty, the paint peeling, the floors creaking underfoot. The only reason some lockers were still assigned there was because the school ran out of space. When I got to mine, I understood why no one wanted it. Locker 329 was at the very end of the hallway, right beside a set of double doors that were always locked and chained shut. The locker's paint was bubbled and flaking, and the dial on the built-in combination lock felt stiff. The air there was different, stale, like the hallway hadn't been aired out in decades. I spun the combination and opened it. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Not mildew, not rust, something sour, almost like spoiled food. I held my breath and looked inside. There was a note taped to the back wall. It was yellowed with age, the handwriting smudged but still legible. It said, "Don't answer the knocking." I pulled the note off, confused. Maybe it was some prank left by a past student. I crumpled it and tossed it in the trash. That night, I mentioned it to my mom. She just laughed and said, "Probably just some bored kid trying to mess with the next person who gets that locker." I agreed. That's all it had to be. The first week went by normally. I kept a few books and my gym bag in there, and nothing strange happened until Friday afternoon. I had just finished last period and was grabbing my backpack when I heard it. 3 knocks, slow, coming from inside my locker. At first, I thought it was someone on the other side of the wall, but the chained double doors next to me led to an unused stairwell. No one should have been there. I hesitated, hand hovering over the metal. Then the knocking came again, this time louder. I pulled the locker open. Nothing. The next Monday, it happened again. This time between classes. I checked inside. Still nothing. By Wednesday, it was happening every day, at random times. Always 3 knocks, always from inside. I even asked my friend Jordan to listen with me. When the sound came, he jerked back and said, "Dude, that's coming from in there." We both looked inside. Empty. By now, I was starting to remember the note I had thrown away. "Don't answer the knocking." I wish I'd listened. The following Friday, I stayed late to make up a quiz. When I went to grab my bag from 329, the hallway was empty. The sun had already set, and the only light came from the flickering fluorescent tubes overhead. I spun my combination, opened the door, and the knocking started immediately. 3 sharp raps right in front of my face from the back of the locker. This time, I didn't close it. I knocked back. Silence. Then, 4 knocks, fast, like it was excited I had responded. I stepped back. My heart was pounding, but curiosity had taken over. I reached into the locker and pressed my palm against the back wall. It was cold. Too cold. And then, something knocked from the other side directly against my hand. I yanked my hand out, slammed the locker shut, and left. That night, I barely slept. The next day, I decided to see what was behind it. I found the janitor, Mr. Holbrook, and asked about the chained double doors next to my locker. He frowned and said, "That stairwell's been sealed for years. Leads down to the sub-basement. Nobody's supposed to go in there." I asked why. He just said, "It's not safe," and walked away. Of course, that only made me more determined. The following week, I came in early before anyone else. I brought a small flashlight and a pair of pliers from my dad's toolbox. The chain on the double doors was old and loose. It took less than a minute to get it off. The air behind the doors was even staler than the hallway. Dust motes floated in my flashlight beam as I crept down the stairs. At the bottom was a short hallway ending in a row of old lockers, exactly like the ones upstairs. Except these were different. They were all open, doors hanging at odd angles, except for one, number 329. It was directly behind mine. I reached out and touched it, cold, just like before. From inside there was a single soft knock. I bent down and peered through the vent holes. My flashlight beam only lit a few inches, but I saw something pale move inside. Something that wasn't a hand but had fingers. It reached toward the vent. That was enough for me. I bolted back up the stairs, rechained the doors, and tried to convince myself it was all in my head. But the knocking hasn't stopped. And last week, when I opened my locker, there was a new note taped to the back wall. In my own handwriting, it said, "Let me out.